Hi, this is Stephen, and this is Astro Indicator Update, Excursions into Practical Astrology, Episode 11. And today, as usual, we'll look at the void of course moon calendar for this upcoming work week. We'll look at a couple financial charts, the Dow Jones Industrials and the Silver chart. Then we will get into the astrology of Apollo 11, and I'll kind of share with you my views on that event. Okay, void of course moon. I'll try to be succinct, but I think this is information that's not easily available, and I think it's helpful. What is the void of course moon? It is the transition the moon takes every 2.5 days when it moves from one astrological sign to another. And normally this only takes a few minutes and people never notice any changes, and it just moves into a new sign. Every now and then it takes longer, like several hours, and then on occasions, like it did this past week, this transition took over 24 hours, this past Thursday, Friday. This week, it only happens for, I haven't added it up, but it's something like about 7 hours or so. And the change that this transition brings about, I think psychologically or in the mood, within the mood of the public, is that there's a sense of disengagement. There's a feeling of shifting into neutral. So it's not it's not a severe change, but what happens when the transition takes several hours and everybody is kind of shifting into neutral, then typically people find it a little more difficult to get things accomplished, because a void of course moon is more ideal for taking a day off, for kicking back, for resting, for playing, for regrouping. It's not a good time to make big decisions, to spend a lot of money, to buy a new car, a new house, or to start a major new phase in your life or your business or whatever. And that's why I always represent that as it's not a great time to get married during a void of course moon. So what do you do? Well, if you see the void of course moon coming up, and we have one on Wednesday, July 24th from 7:48 in the morning to 2:42 p.m., put that in your calendar. Try to do secondary maintenance-like work, and you'll get some things accomplished. However, if you have an important business meeting, you are going to the dentist or whatever, something kind of major, particularly in business, if it's a critical meeting, if at all possible, reschedule it. If you cannot reschedule it, then my advice is pay extra attention to the details of what's going on. Personally, I wouldn't be buying the car, I wouldn't be buying the house, and so forth, because I have a history of noticing these things, over many years, and I, from the tradition of astrology and my own experience, I know that it's better to take this into account and try to stick with more secondary activities, and things will go better. So anyway, this is happening this Wednesday. This is Pacific Daylight Time, and you will have to adjust to your time zone. Now, I haven't done this. I should have done this many episodes ago, but I wanted to sort of make a statement about astrology, my approach to it, and just clarify some things. And so I'm going to read this, and you can come back and read it later. But so here we go. The application of astrology is one of understanding the range of meanings for each symbol, and then recognizing the most specific meaning that's related to the life of the person. My blog here deals with things beyond people, events, financial markets, and so forth. In other words, because a birth chart can be of a dog or of Goldman Sachs, context really matters. Having an insider's understanding of the life of the subject is vital for the practical use of astrology. The operating presupposition is that each entity goes through different energetic cycles, which often overlap and sometimes are at cross currents with each other. Astrology functions like a mirror that helps us see these cycles as they progress and operate through time. This is not fortune telling or reading a crystal ball. Instead, it's a process of combining, blending, or juxtaposing the context of the subject with the energies reflected in the astrology. Hopefully, clarification is the result, along with greater appreciation, forewarning, self-understanding, insight, and so forth. And so again, astrology is not a crystal ball. You have to have an understanding of the market that you're talking about. You know, the more insight you have to that person's life, the better you're going to be able to translate the astrology and recognize which specific meaning is going to apply. So those are some of the things that just come from working with astrology for 40 years. But I think it needed to be said. Okay, let's get on with this. Dow Jones Industrials. So again, I use both technical analysis, the traditional indicators. The vertical lines here are related to the astrology. They're usually within a day or so of strong price movement. I have to combine the technicals with the astrology, and then that, you know, in addition to my experience here, gives me a little bit of forewarning, as I just noted just recently. It gives me some forewarning, and from the context, again, just from what I just said, it increases the odds of knowing what might happen. You know, am I right all the time? No. Even in any psychoanalysis, sometimes there's what are called inverted cycles, which go the opposite direction that you think. Look at any, cyclical analyst in the markets, and they'll agree with that. But here we go. One thing that's happening in the Dow Jones Industrials is that I know these upcoming lines that I've indicated here, July 24th, August 9th, you see them down at the bottom here, plus these lines back here that were in mid-June. All of these three time dates traditionally increase the volatility in the market that they're found. So we have one coming up here on the 24th, and which is Wednesday, I think. So watch the 24th. We have this market having broken a trend line right here, which is a little bit suggestive of more maybe downward price movement. We'll have to wait and see. But you can mark these dates on your calendar. That's just how I use it, and I pay special attention to what's going on around those dates. Let's look at silver. Silver has been catching up with gold. Nice big impulse move here. And we've even broken through this last resistance level. And on Friday, it came back down and is resting on that resistance level. Now, with silver, we also have a volatility date coming up, which is on the 25th. And down here, you can see that. And so we are very much overbought looking at the indicators. You can't see my lower RSI very well, but we are in the overbought territory. I mean, it'd be great if we just traded, sideways at this level for a while. Because when I look ahead with silver, when I get into August, I'm looking here, mid-August, basically. I think it's the 9th and the 16th, actually. These traditionally are bullish energies. We'll see how things stack up. I wouldn't mind seeing some of this overbought readings kind of work itself off and just get lower. So I think there is going to be, given that we have some very usually positive energies happening in mid-August, that this thing is going to continue. So watch possibly for a pullback. This is not, investment advice. This is just my research. Okay, well, let's get into this Apollo 11 thing. This is, I'm going to try to be concise and not go on and on. But I sort of question the whole veracity of the Apollo 11 landing. And I do that with some reluctance because, I think the U.S. was founded upon some very admirable, revolutionary ideals that inspire the world. However, throughout our history, we have gone through periods where sort of certain power centers have, have not been truthful to the public for whatever reasons, often for their own interests. And I think there are very many questionable aspects to the moon landings that need to be examined. And some people just may not want to do that. They may not have the motivation, curiosity, it makes them uncomfortable, whatever. It's like telling someone Santa Claus doesn't exist. I'm sorry. But if you don't look into it, then you may be living in a, illusion. Here is a quote from a blog I received from Donald Jeffries. He's an author. I read his book called Hidden Histories. It's a good book. But I agree with him on many things. And here's what Donald Jeffries says. There are a multitude of other reasons to doubt this story. Richard Nixon supposedly telephoned the astronauts and spoke to them live on the lunar surface. What? Exactly what kind of magical phone line would have been used for that? We lose cell phone coverage today in certain spots on Earth. We're talking 1969 here. If such fantastic technology existed then, it has been lost to history. Speaking of fantastic technology, the power of computers in 1969 was akin to what you'd see today in a handheld calculator. And yet NASA officials have admitted we aren't technologically ready to go back to the moon today with infinitely superior computer capability. An astronaut recently admitted we don't have the technology to go to the moon anymore because NASA allegedly destroyed the technology. What? Does that make any sense whatsoever? Is that the least bit believable? Well, it doesn't add up to me. And this is going on a little bit too long. This blog may be a little bit long for your taste, but I'll just want to relate to you my own personal story here. Like I'm in my 60s. I was 15 years old in 1969. I watched the moon landing on TV at a neighbor's house on my street. I was sitting with a friend of mine, buddy of mine, and his father, who was going to be my basketball coach. And I remember just very clearly watching as supposedly the lunar lander, approached the surface and was trying to find a place to land. And then the announcer said, I'll never forget it, he said, the lunar lander has never successfully been tested. It has never successfully made, a landing. And that was such a glitch in my awareness when I watched that. I didn't say anything, but I thought to myself, what the F, They've sent these guys 330,000 miles away, and they've never tested this craft for, its landing capability. It was never successfully landed anywhere prior to this moment. And I just couldn't believe it. It just seemed outrageously ridiculous and irresponsible, and we were putting the lives of these two astronauts on board at risk, and there was no plan B. Those thoughts went through my head at that time, and then I just set it aside, and years went by, and then I started reading about other aspects of the photographs, the videos, and so forth that were very anomalous and seemed fishy. Just the names of some people that I would recommend looking into. The video work of Bart Sabrell, the writings of Dave McGovern, some of the video from Richard D. Hall and his researcher friend Andrew Johnson, all of them. Some of them say, well, I'm not 100% certain that it was a fraud or hoax, but I'm 90%, and I would say I'm in the same category. So here we go. I was curious to see what the astrology looked like for Apollo 11. And you can't really do the astrology of a supposed, if you believe that, if that's your orientation, landing, because you're on the moon. And you need to do astrology, it's Earth-based astrology. So I did the launch astrology, July 16th, rather than the landing was supposedly the 20th. So this is July 16th in the morning, 1969. This is the chart of the launch, okay? And I was just curious to see what it would show. And then I'm going to look at the transits of this, because that actually is a little more interesting. So you now have my bias, and I've done a significant amount of research looking into this issue. So I have a bias here, and I am interpreting the astrology with that bias. First off, the moon is in Leo. Leo in the 12th house. Okay? Oftentimes, when you have this setup, these are entities that have a theatrical aspect to their character. Okay? They like to be on stage. They like to be the center of attention. But they are oftentimes appear to be putting on a show, okay? And that's my, given what I've said about astrology, that's the context that I'm working with here. Moon in the 12th house. It's like moon conjunct Neptune in a way. 12th house is associated with Neptune. One aspect of a Neptune energy is illusion, deceit, deception. Okay. What else do we have going on here? We have a Jupiter-Uranus conjunction right down here. This is actually perfect for affecting the masses through electronic media. Okay. A very tight conjunction. So this was a momentous event that affected the world. Okay. And it really truly did that. So they achieved their aim, whether it was, legit or not. In addition to those two features, we have a Neptune, Sun, Pluto, we'll call it dynamic. So here's the Sun, 23, Neptune, 26, Scorpio, trine, sextile Pluto in Virgo. We have a big triangle. They're working together, okay? And the way I would interpret this is that we have the, sort of a back room, power center at work here that is manipulating things. And again, we have this Neptune energy that often deals with creating imagery that is misleading, okay? There's positive aspects to Neptune. Again, I'm dealing with a context and my bias, but I see this as a big show to actually deceive the public. And it shows up here for me. So let's look at the transits here. So we have that same chart that we just looked at in the center. We have the existing positions of the planets, the transits, outer ring. So what's going on here? Well, what's going on is that we have Pluto opposite the Sun. Here's the Sun. Here's Pluto moving slowly along. And I don't think it didn't quite get to the Sun this year, but it will next year. So for any entity a corporation, an event, a person. This is a major transit, Pluto opposite the sun. Usually it brings about some, major transformation. That's a very positive slant on it. A major transformation in the, acknowledged previous identity of that person or company. So big changes are coming about, often so tumultuous that it feels like a crisis, okay? Very often something hidden, something that was submerged or suppressed or intentionally, denied, let's say, comes to the surface and is revealed during these transits. This is going to take place several times next year and into 2021. So this event, Apollo 11, truth about this event, I feel, is coming to the surface, particularly over the next 2 years. So it's, this is a very significant happening. So what else is going on here? Well, we have Saturn in conjunct the moon. Transit of Saturn is down here, 16. It's at 16 Capricorn. Right now it's 150 degrees away from the moon. There's maybe a reality of the true reality is impinging upon the created image, okay? Right now, I think many people are waking up to the discrepancies, the contradictions of the story that we've been told. In addition, the final transit is Uranus is conjunct Saturn. It kind of has the same meaning. The Uranus often brings about objective awareness, seeing things clearly. Change is its most abstract symbol. And this is the reality point in the chart, where there's usually a sense of difficulty or weakness or whatever. And I think people are waking up to, the holes in the storyline, basically. And this is going to take place several times over the next year. So major transits are happening to this event, and which I think are going to bring about, greater light and clarification and understanding of really maybe what's going on. And I think that overall will be beneficial for the country. So that's it for today. Again, my name is Stephen. I have an art and psychology background, master's in psychology. I've been studying astrology for 40 years, applying it to financial markets for 25. I'm a sound money and cryptocurrency advocate. And if you like this episode, consider subscribing, hit the like button and all those good things. And I even accept Bitcoin donations. So that's it for today. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.